Unlike CVs, resumes have introductions. Okay? But those introductions have a lot of different forms. And they function very much like the abstract of an article. It gives somebody, as this woman was saying, a chance to get a sense of where is this person going. What are they going to say to me? To decide before I've taken the time to read it whether I actually want to read it. So this is one example, the typical objective. Okay, position in public opinion polling, consumer market product research, using skills in survey design and statistical analysis. What, where, why? You could put that at the beginning, or you could just construct it beforehand and then structure your resume to respond to that. I've seen it both ways. Okay, but try to create this kind of sentence before you start, because then you know what it is you're trying to prove. You don't have to get into every course you took in university, but it's probably worthwhile to talk about where you got this knowledge. Okay? You don't have to talk about every experience you've ever had, but where did this come from? And how do you know you got it? Okay? So this is where this has now decided what's relevant. And that 2 pages you have, you don't have 16, 20, 25 pages. You've got 2 pages. So you have to make judgments. What is going to be so important to this position that it warrants a space on those 2 pages? And this gives you that criteria. Okay? Then whether or not you actually include an objective, a career objective on your resume, it's entirely up to you. Another way of doing this is this kind of thing. This is coming from the sample resume, and I'll put it on the site again. This is one they used at last year's session. The resume itself was very targeted to a very specialized field, so I didn't use a whole resume, but I like the way they set up their summary section at the beginning of it. So I'm just giving you a sample. There was many more bullets in this, but to give you the flavor of where they went with it. Okay, so demonstrated capacity for building collaborative relationships, 6 years specialized research. Lots of people could talk about this in a lot of different fields. Maybe not the economic analysis part, but these are the types of things as PhDs that you could start reiterating what you've done at. Not so specific to your field, more in how you did it. So this is how you take something that you've done that was very specific, your research, your dissertation, you pull it out of the knowledge context and you put it in the process context. Okay? Then at the bottom you'll see, I'll put the link on my site, that they give just bullet points. What are some, this is like the teaching specialization, research specialization section of your CV. It's like that, only related to the context of the job market. What are the areas that you actually know something about, have some expertise in, are able to do? Then the rest of the resume under this heading would be providing the evidence to support this. So the resume begins with some sort of introduction that summarizes, highlights qualifications, provides an objective, but provides some sort of abstraction as to why the person reading this resume should go further. In an ideal situation, this is coming after they've met you, they've talked to you, you've already made a good impression, they wanted to know more about you, so they asked for a resume, they've already decided perhaps they're going to hire you, but for their own internal processes they need a resume. Very rarely will you be doing this cold and sending it into some place where you know nothing. Okay, it's almost always going to be connected to another body of activity. Okay. So it gets down to the experience section, and this is where people really struggle. I have no experience. What am I going to put in my experience section? So what I'm doing here for the next couple slides, I'm giving you some resources that you can go to start thinking about that terminology, that vocabulary. What are they going to care about? What are the words I could even use to talk about this? One of them is the Innovative Skills Profile set out by the Conference Board of Canada. I'll put the link on the site. There's a whole list of skills related to innovation, and it's remarkable when you read through these skills how many of them are merely a reiteration of the experience of your average PhD. Okay? Now, if the job you are applying for is directly related to your field of study, it may behoove you to put your education first. If you see the job, particularly if you're going into think tank work or work that has to do with a research council, that kind of work that's pretty closely directed to research in some capacity, it may make more sense to put your education first where that position seems to emerge naturally out of your educational activities. Okay? So there may be a logic to putting your education section first. But very often, when you're going into non-academic work, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, the fact that you've got your education is not as important as what you have learned along the way. And in the education section, that's a noun-driven category. And we really want to sort of dispel those concerns that the academic doesn't get the real world. They've been so isolated from the real world that they can't really function. You want to dispel that by really putting the focus of your resume on the priorities of that organization. So wherever those priorities are going to come from, whether it's from your education or from your experience, that's the section that goes next. Okay? Occasionally the skills may need to be explicitly articulated, particularly where it's a particular skill set. If you need to know video editing, if you need to know particular computer software, if you need to know how to do particular types of analysis, SPSS, if there's particular protocols that you have to know, it may not be a bad idea to have a special skills section with those very specific relevant skills in it. But again, that's a unique situation that may be relevant in a particular instance, but generally not across the board. You wouldn't make a rule about that, for instance. But be open to doing that. If you know that, way back, when you did your BA, maybe you took a film course and you learned Final Cut Pro and you've dabbled with it off and on over the years. You're going to an NGO and they want somebody who can do a documentary while they happen to be in Africa. Well, all of a sudden that stuff became relevant again. So on this, you have that flexibility to bounce around and bring up to the foreground those nailheads from wherever they came from in your past that form the shape of the function and the form of the position that you're applying to. Okay? So the innovation skills profile, I'm not suggesting you take this and put it on your resume. I'm suggesting that you look at that when you're at the brainstorming stage and you're trying to imagine what you would even say about yourself in non-academic terms. This starts giving you an idea of what matters out there, some vocabulary about it, how they've structured it, and maybe here you can start thinking about how this applies to your teaching. How does this apply to your research or the service, the committees you've sat on? Maybe you can pull out some of your experiences from there to talk about it in this way. And they've got a whole brochure on this that I'll put up on the web. UC Davis, they've got this whole sheet, would also be on the web, skills specific to graduate students. Again, not articulated particularly well, but it's a good way to start going, oh, yeah, impose structure in the face of chaos. Okay, I'm going into an organization that's just had a huge amount of funding cutbacks. I imagine things are pretty chaotic there. How can I draw a connect between when I've done this and what they might be facing? Okay. Another resource, one from York University. They've taken the verbs and arranged them functionally. So if you know you want to highlight your communication skills, there's a whole pile of communication verbs. Just as a brainstorming, what's the word that I can use? Develop. Develop's a good word. I like that word. Maybe I could talk about how I develop something. Okay? Accomplishments. Things that inherently resulted in something. Verbs that do that, really high impact words to have on 2 pages. Okay, so if you can articulate what you've done in terms of improving something, pioneering something, anything that you've done that counts as original research, you've pioneered something there. Okay, so start thinking about this in other contexts.